Good morning. Do you guys want to take time to introduce yourselves as we start?
Yeah, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
So I am Mark Butler from Action Aviation. We are more a Dubai-based entity. We operate a couple of aircraft out of Dubai, but our principal business is sales and brokerage.
Jeff Lowe, I'm Vice Chairman of Avion Pacific. Avion Pacific is based in Shenzhen in China, and I guess is a traditional business model for a Chinese entity where we represent a number of American manufacturers who at one point in time were interested in breaking into the China market. So we are the Sikorsky rep, the MD helicopter rep. We are the distributor for the King Air in China. More recently, and actually just announced last week, we just became the Bell helicopter rep in China as well. We've gotten rid of Sikorsky, gone with Bell and the 525. Also, Avion Pacific, logistics, training, pretty much a whole portfolio of different entities, all geared towards helping people enter and do business in the China market. Recently, we've kind of seen that flow go the other way, where it's now Chinese entities that are looking for our help to get into the international markets. And a lot of that at the moment, it has to do with the advanced air mobility. As you all probably know, the low altitude income economy, as they call it in China at the moment, is very hot, and that entails a lot of eVTOLs and advanced air mobility. Avion Pacific is also the parent company of Asian Sky Group, which I think most in the room probably know a little bit better. Asian Sky Group is IATA aircraft trader, so we're members of IATA. But at the same time, we have a market research and consulting side of the business. We produce a number of market reports, again, to try to give everyone some visibility of what is the Asia market and what does it entail. That also is, we also are charter brokers, and that has been, as we've heard over the last, yesterday and everything else, been a very, very hot market recently, certainly in Asia as well. And then we also have a media side of our business too, so.
Good morning, I'm Heather Gordon. I'm Legal Director at Martin Fidler. So we have offices in Ireland, the Isle of Man, the UK, and the Netherlands. We really come into our own in the areas of tax, customs, that's import, export, and other customs procedures, and then corporate ownership. And really, our business works if you have an aircraft that is going into the European area, you will create a liability. So that's where we sit.
And I'm Matt Potts, so I'm with Jaffa & Co., based out of London, but we have offices in Monaco and here in Fort Lauderdale. We're up in Fort Lauderdale as well. I was with Jetcraft for about 7 years before this, and NetJets prior to that in-house, before joining James's team and joining the private practice. So if I remember right on the panel, the first topic of discussion was, is the market tilting back towards international transactions? What do you guys think?
I'll wade in there. Every one of our deals is international, so
Yeah.
so for me, it's kind of the question is more, is it coming back? Well, what's our deal flow like at the moment? Because, like I said, everything is international. Asian Sky Group is based out of Hong Kong. There is no really domestic market, so everything's international for us. And then you get back to what we've talked about again yesterday, and that certainly when you had the other broker panel up here, first quarter, second quarter was probably fairly normal, but as we got closer and closer to November, if anybody that was at the IATA meeting at NBAA, the buzzword was uncertainty, and that just, there's been a huge pause in the market while everyone's kind of waited for the shoes to drop. Probably for us, even though the decision has been made, certainly when it comes to the election, what happens now still is is not determined. I mean, there's been a lot of rhetoric before about China, and now that Trump is in, we need to see what that means going forward. And so still that uncertainty still remains, but I think everyone in the room kind of agrees that that big chunk of uncertainty that everyone had is gone. So much like everyone else, we kind of expect things to get back to normal, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens through the end of the year. Like a lot of people, we've had deals that have been waiting. So if you want, is international coming back? And I would say yes then, because we expect, you know, that level of uncertainty is diminished, and less uncertainty means more people are going to be okay with moving forward. So, and that uncertainty wasn't just the election. I mean, it's interest rates and all the other stuff. We, of course, have some unique things in our part of the world, China, Taiwan, a whole bunch of other issues like that. But I think certainly we're looking forward to seeing that log jam sort of breaking up and, if you will, those international deals coming back.
Just to add to that, I think, yeah, I haven't seen international deals stop. They might increase, but there's never been a pause in that. And while there's been the election in the US in 2024, I think I'm right in saying there was actually over 70 elections internationally. And in Europe in particular, it's not just the European Union. You have the UK and its election. You've got Switzerland. You've got many other areas within Europe. And I think we're getting so used to elections and it swinging right and then swinging left that people aren't pausing, because if you paused, you would just sit on the fence completely. It is, people are just buying whether or not there's an election.
Yeah, I think for us, it's really been the lack of available aircraft more than anything else. I mean, in the summer, we did slow down a bit. It's not unusual in our region. A lot of people leave because it's too hot. But I think one of the biggest problems we've had is finding decent aircraft that aren't massively overpriced and all over the market. So our transactions, actually, majority of them are Middle East, Asia based. We don't tend to go over to Jeff's side, but we're more sort of India region. But we've had almost nothing from the US this year in terms of quality leads. We get the odd aircraft here and there, but I think everyone is still too highly COVID priced, and it needs to be readjusted.
Yeah.
So yeah, for us, the deals don't stop, depending on what the US does. But I think now that all this election crap is out of the way, then it should get a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like to your guys' point, I think nearly every transaction I do is international on some level. It's very rarely that I'm doing a purely domestic transaction. I'd like them. They're a little easier, to be honest, but I guess if they're too easy, they wouldn't need me, so I'll keep doing the international deals. The other question that was asked for the topic was, is Europe off business aviation? Clearly, there's a lot more complexity there with the climate issues that are prevalent, and then the government taxation. What are your guys' thoughts?
For Europe, to be honest, we get almost nothing. We very rarely see any decent leads out of Europe. That may have something to do with our focus is more on the Gulfstream global-sized aircraft, so we don't tend to deal with the smaller stuff. Europe's not really a massive market for large, super long range, but Europe is nigh on dead for us. We really don't get any decent leads that go anywhere. And I think it's been the same as the US. I think everyone's just waiting to know what's going on with the governments, and the taxation. Obviously, UK have just increased the airport duty for private jets, which I don't know whether they think it's clever or not. It's not. I don't think it's going to do much. It will certainly hurt the charter brokers, but I think the the private jet client, whether he's paying £100 or £200, I don't think he really cares. So it's a move just to satisfy the green people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree, although we haven't seen a let up. And there's a question there, which is what percentage of your deal flow is European versus US based? Well, I mean, about 90% of them. If you sit in Europe, that's where the transactions are. And regarding the taxes, I told this sort of adage that the art of taxation is plucking the goose in the gentlest yet most incremental way so that it only hisses. And you see the taxes in the UK at the moment and across Europe. I mean, France is bringing in an equivalent of APD, the Chirac tax, they're calling it. And there will be a point where the pendulum swings to the point of hissing, to the point of honking, I feel. But then you're only going to see transactions increase, because if people decide to get rid of their aircraft, there's going to be a lot of very happy lawyers out there. And then governments will realise, oh dear, we screwed up a bit here. And then the pendulum will start going the other way. So yes, there's going to be carbon taxes, there's going to be luxury taxes, but it's the point at which that really hurts. And remembering that most of our clients do not work in business aviation. They work in every other industry, and they use business aircraft as a tool to facilitate what they're doing. As long as they're doing well, they're not going to suddenly decide, yeah, okay, you know what, I'm just happy to sit in the back of a commercial airliner. They use it, they utilize it, and it's as part of their business strategy. So they might tax a bit more, but they're going to pay for it.
I think also as a consequence of all this tax, I mean, we've noticed in Dubai, the traffic is horrendous. I mean, it's been through a massive expansion in people coming into Dubai from the Western world. The Russians are already there and have created their own problems and their own communities there. But now there's, you know, property prices are going through the roof. You can't, if you want to go and buy a new car, it's several months until you can get one. You can't get parking spaces. You can't, you know, the other day we left the Palm and it took us almost an hour to get off of the Palm. It's about 6 kilometers, like 4.5 miles for everyone in this room. And it took us an hour. And that's just volume of people. It's absolutely crazy. And I think this is just going to continue and continue. And Dubai are pumping more and more money into property development and expansion, but they just can't keep up. I think everyone that we speak to, they've just had enough of the European tax issues and knowing, you know, where they're still keeping their businesses going, but for their personal tax stuff, they're moving to Dubai.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the only European exposure we have is most brokers are coming to Asia hunting, if you will. And certainly we saw a lot of that over the last couple of years and even today. If we're doing any transactions, the majority of the fixed wing anyways are going into the US market. Again, a lot of brokers coming out looking for that, I'm going to use the word distressed airplane, looking to maybe take that into their inventory, and then bring it back into the US market. Again, a little bit of European business like that, but again, the majority of it, again, kind of dealing with the question is going to the US. I see a question here saying, when will China return? I guess the good news is I think it's finally bottomed out. It's been a couple of years of, shall we say, extreme contraction. I think the China fleet on a net basis has lost about 150 airplanes over the last couple of years. And that's on a net basis. So that market is half the size that it was before. I guess my answer to that was, I think anyone who's done business in China will know a lot of that were owners that shouldn't have been in airplanes in the first place, but because Mr. Lee, my neighbor, had one, I got one too. So if you want to kind of put a positive spin on it, there has been a cleansing. It was needed, and hopefully from now it will build back up. I think the days, if Chris Ellis is in the room, of a vast quantity of airplanes coming out of China, I don't see it at all. I think they're pretty much done. Some of those airplanes in China have moved elsewhere, but the big issue, of course, in China is, as many people said about the U.S. Election, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid. It's the economy. I mean, China is not in a good place at the moment economically. A lot of the buyers of airplanes were the property companies, developers, and they're all highly distressed at the moment. And whereas the rest of the world had inflation, China had deflation, and that was just because nobody's buying anything. If you will, consumer confidence is at extreme low. So until people get back to buying, we're not going to see China return.
Are these high net worth individuals, as they start to consider buying aircraft again, are they concerned about opening themselves up to government inspection or anything like that?
Totally. There's been a day of reckoning. China has experienced great growth as a country over the last 10, 15 years, but there's definitely a feeling amongst the population that has passed me by. And so I think a lot of in the room may have heard about the central government's conspicuous consumption campaign, if you will, before they were going after, if you will, the high-tech guys and high net worth guys for other reasons. But now it's a conspicuous consumption in that everyone should be benefiting from this boom, and that hasn't been happening. So exactly, there's a lot of negative public perception for my chairman if he's photographed going down that ladder of that business jet at the moment. So a lot of the airplanes have been sold for that reason, or they have been moved to elsewhere in Asia, based in Singapore or in Malaysia, Thailand, where they can still put the aircraft and not have that exposure. But most, for sure, there's still central government public perception issue as well that has to be tackled. So.
And then looking at the questions here too, Mark, you may have better insight on this, but do you know if there's still these jets that have Russian affiliation are still parked in Dubai?
Yes. They are annoyingly taking up all the hangar space. So my really nice newly painted BBJs spent the summer outside. Yeah, it's very annoying, and the MROs are taking advantage by charging crazy rates to store aircraft in a lovely air-conditioned facility. But why not? I mean, what else are they going to do with them? I suspect there are some movements here and there, but yeah, most are just parked and dying. Some of them are having the engine runs done. One particular client with the BBJ, he flies crew from the UK every 2 weeks out to Dubai to run the engines and do a circuit. Total waste of money. But there is still, I think, the expectation that all of a sudden the manufacturers are going to turn around and say, yeah, sure, actually go ahead and use your aircraft. But it's going to be years, yeah. And of course, I think this was picked up the other day, that a lot of these aircraft that are parked, as soon as they get back into operation, all the engine manufacturers are going to say, well, hang on a sec, we need to do borescopes, we need to check, and then all the engines are going to come off, and then it's going to be months. I mean, even now we're sending engines off, and we can't get a slot for 2 months. As soon as these Russian aircraft come back in, it's the average American Joe is going to be waiting 6-8 months to get his engine overhauled. Yeah. So it's going to be a real problem. I really think it's going to be a big problem. And I think this is the time that the engine manufacturers should start planning ahead and start bringing in more loaner options, so there's more options for people to keep flying. But the Russian aircraft will flood the market eventually. Some of them are for sale. Obviously, you can transact on a Russian aircraft if there's no sanctions and they pass all the relevant checks. But their prices are crazy, absolutely nuts. Yeah. They're way off, millions and millions off where they need to be.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, more likely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to answer that one. We don't do it.
Yeah. I saw another question too about the percentage of deals that we do that may have some sort of U.S. Interest. And I mean, at least me personally, most of the deals I do, I mean, based in London as myself, and as we were saying, they're going to be mainly European-based deals. But I would say at least maybe probably a third have some level of U.S., whether it's a buyer or seller. So, you know, the U.S. is still the, you know, the elephant. I mean, they're the largest market out there. So it's just you know, percentages it's going to happen that there's U.S. side on something.
I think it's good. I mean, from our standpoint, doing a deal in the US from a US seller to a US buyer is massively different than transacting internationally. Mm-hmm. You know, you guys don't have the tax issues. You don't have the differences between the aircraft being on one registry to another, and what SECs apply and what don't apply, and what service bulletins apply and don't apply. The issue with maintenance, and, you know, whether you get, you know, we have aircraft in India that come up for sale that are maintained by some really fantastic MROs. Sometimes they go to Singapore for maintenance, they come to Dubai, or they're done in India. But then you get the buyer who might be in Europe or the US or whatever, and they're saying, oh, I don't know if I can trust that it was maintained properly. You know, so we have all these barriers that are put up right from the get-go, that you have to keep knocking down every single one. So our transactions are minimum 2 months up to 6-8 months sometimes. Mm-hmm. You know, to get a deal done. There's really a lot more work that goes into it than just doing an easy deal. I would love to just do US to US. That would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. I could just sit back, hand it to the lawyer, take my commission check at the end, you know. But it just does not work that way. You know, we babysit through all of our PPIs. We babysit through the contracts. We back-to-back the deals, because normally there is there's a conflict between the two nations that are doing the deals. One doesn't like the other, so we end up stepping in the middle. And yeah, it's a fortune. It really is a fortune. We're spending costs of $100,000 plus to do a deal. But we do that to make sure that it gets done. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the day I can do US to US. That's fantastic.
And just to add to that, we talked about due diligence yesterday, as sort of different regulations, and especially on international transactions, there is no level playing field.
No.
And you are balancing what, so for example, we need to onboard a client. I don't want to go to jail. And the other side are saying, no, but we don't need this. We don't need to give you this information. Why are you being so stubborn? I said, well, I don't want to go to jail, and I will if I don't ask for this information. I mean, not immediately to jail, obviously, but it is, I think, Jeff and I were discussing this morning, that the sort of, hopefully we're all going in one direction. It's just we're not going in that direction quite as quickly as everybody else.
The trouble is those Russians are sneaky buggers. You know, they change their passports, they change their businesses, they still have ties here and there. And, you know, you really have to delve very deep into a client to make sure that they, you know, we can transact with them. I mean, we transact out of Dubai with Dubai entities, but I'm still a UK passport holder, and most of my team are European passport holders. So we still have to follow the same procedures. And, you know, you get to the point, and this is where a really good lawyer comes into play. You know, you sort of go through your KYC and you go to the lawyer and, yeah, no, he's really good. He's a Italian passport holder. He used to be Russian, but actually now he's Italian. he does property now, and he sits on the beach a lot, and he's really good. He's just got money. It's all in Europe. Yeah, no problem, no problem. And then a week later, they come back and say, well, actually, he's getting money from crypto through Abu Dhabi, or, and you're like, shit, I've wasted months on this guy, and he's just failed KYC. Yeah.
I think all we're trying to say is international deals are not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
But again, I think you kind of get a gist from Mark's comments that I think it does require the parties involved in the transaction from a broker side. You do have to have a little bit of size and scope, because there are just so many things that you have to look after.
Absolutely.
I think one of the questions we were supposed to address are international deals getting any easier. And for me, it's complete opposite. And
No.
a lot of it has to do with the due diligence, the KYC.
Yeah.
But getting those international deals across the line just literally takes months. And for a smaller broker who maybe doesn't have the depth of the people that he has in his organization, it's a real challenge, But the deals, for me at least, and I think you'll agree, getting even harder to do. And
For sure.
a lot of it is the condition of the airplane, as well as we heard yesterday, and getting that through the system and through the PPI, and just it takes forever. And just those, that crypto guy on the beach, there's just all kinds of other things that pop up. And, we're likewise dealing with Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and these are the emerging markets in Asia, and each one has their own unique challenges, regulations, governments, and again, certainly, I think if we talk about Asia, I don't know for Dubai and the Middle East, but a lot of third parties involved in any transaction, and managing all those parties, and managing to the sense where you're okay, you're not doing anything you're not supposed to be doing, but there's a third party involved, maybe on both sides, that has to be somehow managed in one way or another and done legally, and so a lot of that adds complexities to those transactions as well.
And their expectation in commission. You get
Yes.
you get someone, we're doing you end up doing a 2002 global or something, and it's a minimal amount of money in the deal, and they come back and say, well, we need 800 grand in commission. Well, I can't, it's just not done. And you end up having to negotiate with the broker to bring them down to a sensible level in order just to get the deal going in the first place. And that can take sometimes weeks. But it does stress, actually, if you have a good network of brokers that you work with and you trust, it really does speed up the transaction and makes it a lot easier to do. And I think that recently, certainly since COVID, some of the trust between the brokers has fallen away, and there's now more requirements for NDAs and everything, whereas prior to COVID, it was, I've got this guy, this is his name, these are his details. Sure, let's do a deal together. We're finding now more and more that brokers want to protect themselves, which again adds another complexity into it as well.
But again, kind of getting back to the topic of opportunities, certainly Asia is a market that I think you have to keep your eye on. And you were talking again, as you said at breakfast this morning, I mean, Asia is obviously not just one country. I think the ICAO definition puts it at 37, and each one's unique. So you have to really kind of pick and choose where you want to be and where the opportunities are. Some markets like China, probably the opportunities are on the low side at the moment, but there are certainly other countries and other areas which are experiencing good growth. When you look at the Asia market as well, I mean, 2/3 of the fleet is China, Australia, and India. And, that covers 2/3 of the fleet. So China, we've kind of spoken about. Australia is another unique market, all of its own, but it's a mature market. They actually right-size the purchase of the aircraft. They have a need, they go find the best aircraft to fill that need, and then my assessment of the Aussies are they're very value conscious as well, so for them buying a used airplane, not a big deal, so they're happy to go down that route. So very different market, very mature, kind of on an annual basis. Every year you're seeing that market grow 2 to 5%, but again, kind of maybe playing into what you're going to talk about, but the other big market in Asia certainly is India. and tremendous wealth generation going on, which can only then eventually lead to more opportunities for business aviation. So those are the three big markets in the Asia Pacific. You've got these other little ones that are going on that, are growing, 300, 400%, but that means they went from one airplane to two airplanes. So, but there's still opportunities, but you have to be really kind of dialed into the Asian market to pick up on those opportunities. But I think you should probably talk a little bit towards India, because I think a lot of people in the room, that's getting a lot of focus, and for good reasons, because the wealth generation taking place there is extraordinary. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give any secrets away because there's a load of brokers in the room, but India is an amazing market, as well as actually I think Saudi next year is going to start to grow really quickly. There's some great things in Saudi that the authorities are doing to enable foreign registered aircraft to operate within the region on charter.
I think I saw a CJI Saudi Arabia, right, Al, Lou?
Yeah, that's a definite must. And
I see a hand waving in the back. Yeah, so I mean,
and Delhi CJI is a must. There's a big market there. There's a lot of wealthy people in India. It's associated with being more third world, but far from it. There's an extreme number of wealthy people. As with all Indians, they don't want to spend any money. They all want to borrow money, but they don't meet the strict finance criteria of the Western banks. So we're in this sort of zone where you've got the willingness to pay and the ability to pay, but they just can't get the finance. But they don't also like to spend their own money. That they also, with the exchange issues, it's easier for them to reinvest into India and just borrow money on an aircraft. But yeah, it's a massive market. There's more new aircraft going into India than people think. But dealing with Indian nationals comes with its own complexities in terms of negotiations. And then you've got the whole, the aviation authority, you have age restrictions on the aircraft, and also the equipment level of the aircraft has to meet their specific requirements. So it comes with its own challenges, but it's a very good market for us, and we do a lot with India.
I see one of the questions here again regarding the Asia Pacific and the new ultra long range. Again, most of them coming into the region are replacements. So if you look at, as one of the brokers based out in Asia, I mean, we have a lot of 650s at the moment, and that's primarily because all those new ultra long range airplanes are coming into the region now, but they're all in a replacement. So whether it's just a swap out, so you're not seeing that fueling any kind of big growth. I mean, they are coming into the region now, whereas it wasn't prevalent over the last year and the year before. So it's good to see them coming into the area at the moment.
And you mentioned a lot of the Indian buyers aren't able to really qualify for the financing. Are you seeing other regions that it's difficult to find financing for, or do you see a lot of some of the major U.S. lenders kind of easing up on the?
And before you answer that, when you say major U.S. lenders, who are they?
Just the ones that lend.
I mean, because again, we had a bank.
We don't see those.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to. That's why I kind of asked the question. Yeah. It's kind of a back end thing.
I mean, secret source of cash or something that we can dip into.
We had a panel before with PNC and First Source Bank. Is it First Source? I mean, and I've never done a transaction with them. The European banks are very prevalent in our region. So UBS, BNP, they're all in the region, and we see them quite a bit. We used to have Bank of America, Citi, and so on out, but I really haven't seen them knocking on doors in a long time. Again, a lot of the European banks. And again, it really comes down to the KYC issues, okay? So
repossession.
Yeah, all kinds of issues that just a lot of the big banks, if you're listed on the Hang Seng and you've got, XYZ number of years of financials, I already have an existing banking relationship with you, it can be done. But otherwise, you've got to find other sources. Big player in our our neck of the woods is certainly Global Jet Capital. So they've certainly been out of the region and have been very successful out there as well.
It's to be possibly controversial. I see
Go ahead.
more European banks backing away from business aviation, but you have a whole big old territory there which is ripe for American banks to come in because everybody's got their KYC ready. The European lenders, not the Swiss ones, but the European lenders going, oh, sustainability, not sure whether I can do this. The UK banks are beginning to follow sort of suit. And actually, the UK banks were generally funding smaller deals. They're now trying to fund bigger deals. I think Europe is ripe for Americas because we've got our CDD, we've got our regulations, we're ready to go, and we just need somebody to finance us.
And that works in Europe, but for our region, I think, more probably mine than yours, I don't know, maybe, the banks are too frightened to lend money into the region because they're worried about getting the aircraft back. And actually, that's far from the case.
A lot of times they want to know where the airplane's going, how often.
Yeah.
Have you got U.S. dollars outside of whatever region? I mean, they are definitely looking to mitigate their risk.
Absolutely. And this is why I'm sure many in the room remember Hamish. Hamish and I discussed like maybe 10 years ago about starting to use our own income to fund clients. So we set up our own finance company because it was just, we were presenting all these millionaires and billionaires to UBS and BNP and everyone else, and they were the wrong type of billionaire. How do you get the wrong type of billionaire? This guy, you know, we finance aircraft out. Some are $500,000 a month, some are $250 a month. We get payments on time every time. We get anything, all the cash we need, no problem, here it is. You know, we've never had an issue whatsoever. And I think that's something the banks have got to get over. There is a tremendous opportunity in our regions to finance a lot more customers, but the banks need to work with the brokers and the operators and build that relationship. And when you do that, there are solutions out there that I don't want to go over now and give too many secrets, but there are solutions available to give the banks comfort to finance in our region.
I see one of the questions here is if you were to rank the international markets high to low. Again, I guess in my neck of the woods, a lot of focus at the moment on Southeast Asia, so Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore. And a lot of that is buyers from other parts of Asia, but nevertheless putting their aircraft in that area. Sort of playing into you, from just everything I know of what's going on in the Middle East, it's got to be an interesting market. It has to be on your list. So certainly Southeast Asia. China's not ready for you yet, but the opportunities in Southeast Asia are very good, and I keep an eye on the Middle East market as well, because I think there's a lot of things happening in the kingdom, in Emirates and so on that are really interesting, and I think will open up that market. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Saudi's slowly migrating into a Dubai-type state. They're not there yet. They're many years away, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was even pre-COVID. You know, they're really promoting tourism. You can go and get a license now from the authority. It's like $10,000. Some
extraordinary tourist projects, just extraordinary.
Massive projects. They are incredibly expensive. So they've developed like a Maldivian-style resort in the south, and it's like 3-4 times the cost of the Maldives. But anyway, it's a good step. But now you can, as a charter operator, you can base your aircraft in Riyadh, go and get a license. You have to have certain connections, but they're easy to find. And they give you a piece of paper that says, yeah, you can do charter within the region, because they're massively short of biz jets in Saudi. Yeah, they did come down hard on illegal charter, for sure. Yeah. But as long as you follow the rules, it's like anywhere, really. Any
the French are even worse for illegal charter. You know, you can say goodbye to your aircraft.
Yeah, lots of effort in the Asia-Pacific region on the illegal charter. Asia has its Asia Business Aviation Association, ASBA, and so they're certainly leading that charge. It's getting better. Maybe sometimes it seems like it's getting worse, but certainly illegal charter is certainly getting a higher profile. Sort of touching on sustainability, I think that's yet to get to Asia.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a cause at the moment, but since most flights will originate in Asia but end up in Europe, they have to be concerned about it, and all the operators do as well. But sustainability is really yet to take hold in the Asia-Pacific region.
Dubai is like $1.50 a gallon, so you could ignore the Greenpeace part in Dubai for sure.
All right, I think that wraps us up. Appreciate it.
Okay. Super, thank you.